So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Discover Tennessee History webinar. I'm Kira Duke with Teaching with Primary Sources at MTSU. And we are very excited to have with us Sarah Green from Tennessee State Parks, who's going to be our featured presenter for this month in the series. But a couple of things before I turn things over to her. First, again, for those of you who are joining us live, just the usual reminders to please keep yourself muted unless you are responding to a question from the presenter. But feel free to use the chat function. Again, we do want the session to be as interactive as possible. And we'll be monitoring that. So if you have questions or anything pops up there, we'll make sure that those are addressed as we go through. If you are watching this recording later on, we hope that you'll be able to join us for a live session soon so that you can actually participate in the conversation with us. For this series, we do have a Padlet page where you can find all of the different materials from each of the sessions. This is actually almost the end of our third round of this webinar series. So we have quite a few different sessions that have been featured that you can find on that Padlet. And then with each one of them, you'll find a link to the recording. So if you missed one of the sessions, you can go back and catch it that way. I will show this again at the end of the session, so don't feel rushed to grab it now. You can always catch the QR code and the link again at the end. So as I mentioned, this month's presenter is Sarah Green with Tennessee State Parks. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to her.
Thank you, Kira. I'm going to remember how to use Zoom here and share my screen. All right. I hope you can see two lovely young ladies in a cave. Here we go. All right. So thank you so much for joining and for letting me join you for Discover Tennessee History. My name is Sarah Green. I serve as the Education Program Coordinator for Tennessee State Parks. Today, we're going to talk about how we can learn together in and outside of our Tennessee State Parks. We have resources for you, and we hope that we can get connected. So I'm inspired by these two young ladies to take a moment of reflection, to take a big breath and just kind of breathe, take that moment of, that's how I feel when I go to a park. It feels like I can just breathe and feel good. Just anecdotally, we feel better outside in a park, and scientifically, we know we feel better outside in a park. These two little girls are on a free field trip paid for by the Tennessee State Parks Conservancy and hosted at Dunbar Cave. They've had such a great time. I tagged along on this experience, and it was so fun. But they remind me of what it was like to be a kid on a field trip. So I think we should take a couple minutes, and I invite you to think back to a field trip that you went on as a student. Maybe you were a young, first or second grader, or maybe it was a middle school field trip or high school or even college. And think about your favorite field trip. Did you get on a bus? Was it a school bus? My favorite one was we got to ride on a Greyhound bus, and we just thought that was the coolest thing for a field trip. And where did you go? And how did you feel when you got to stand up and get off the bus and go into this new, unique place for this experience? Who were you with? What did you get to do when you were there? And what made that experience so special that you're remembering it right now? For me, it was, we got to get up, we were in fourth grade, and we got to get up at like 5 a.m. and meet at school when it was dark and there was no one else there. We got on this big gray line buses, and we were headed to Huntsville, Alabama, to the Space Museum. And it was so cool because we got to do it together in these, fancy buses, like I said. And it was a place where we could go and try things out and get to see, a real astronaut and eat real astronaut food, which is definitely not a good tasting experience. But at fourth grade, it's amazing. But it was a unique experience. that I still remember today. And this inspires all of our park rangers to create these experiences for students. And I hope that you'll join us as we create these experiences for your students. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I serve as the education program coordinator for Tennessee State Parks. As far as I know, I am the only person who's had this position. We've been a park system since 1937. And we've had, 80 years where we've looked at education on an individual park level. And now we're looking at what does education look like for a whole system. We've gotten some momentum in that area, and we're so excited to be emerging into this new phase for education. I come from a family of teachers. My mom is a retired teacher, finally got her to retire, teaching second or third grade and then second grade. My sister is a teacher in Putnam County. I was in early childhood ed and pre-kindergarten for 12 years in Sumner County. Teaching is something you're born to do, I really think. And even if you choose a different profession, it's just who you are. So I hope that you're feeling the same way about what you do. A little bit about me. I enjoy a really good cup of tea, British comedy, history, maps. I have so many maps. I think I counted them earlier today. I have like 5 just within view of my kitchen table here. And of course, time outdoors. There's some pictures of some of my experiences in my first 5 years with Tennessee State Parks, training teachers, training rangers, and then, getting to participate as if I'm a student. It's the best job ever. So a happy me is sunshine in the outdoors. I'm set. Today, we're going to talk about what are some educational opportunities in Tennessee State Parks. What does it look like if you came to a park or if a ranger came to a school? We're going to highlight some specific parks in all of the core districts. This, of course, will not touch every park, but just a few to get you kind of a menu of what we offer. We're going to explore how to request a Tennessee State Parks educational experience. And if you stay till the end, because I've watched YouTube videos, I know how this goes. If you stay to the end, you can find out how your next field trip could be free. So I hope you'll stick with us. So a little bit about Tennessee State Parks. We have 57 state parks. I hope you'll find yourself on this map. I had to include a map, of course, and see how close a park is to you. We like to say that in our park planning, if we want everybody to be within an hour of a Tennessee State Park. And if you live in some areas, in the Nashville area, in the Jackson area, in the Cookeville area, up there near Johnson City or Chattanooga, I mean, you have a lot of parks to choose from. If I had given this presentation 6 months ago, I would have said we have 56 state parks. We've added one. And if you heard the Governor Lee's State of the State address, you've probably heard that we are getting 4 more state parks. So we're excited to be growing and sharing more Tennessee history with you guys. When I first started 5 years ago, within my first week, I wrote on a Post-it and put it in my cube. How do teachers know? I came in teaching world, walked into Tennessee State Parks. It was an office building in Nashville. Underground is literally where they put us park people. But everybody was telling me, this is what we offer teachers, and you can do this and you can do that. And I just sat down, picked up a Post-it and wrote, how do teachers know? Because then I called, to be real, I texted lots of my teacher friends and said, hey, did you know that this was a thing? And they said, no, I had no idea. And then I said, did you know this was a free thing? And they said, tell me more. So that how do teachers know has inspired a lot of what we're doing right now. And that has grown to how do teachers connect with us? We want to be the most accessible state park system in the country. We even have, as part of our Department of Environment and Conservation, an entire committee that's focused on making us the most accessible state park system in the country. And I get to serve on that committee and get excited. There's some really good things coming. So what we offer to from Tennessee State Parks for teachers kind of looks like 3 different things. We've got field trips, classroom or schoolyard visits, and then virtual connections. Because again, we want to be accessible. Field trips are our most traditional experience. They happen 9 in the morning to noon. Then you got your little lunchtime, get on a bus, you're good. Field trips, though, they happen at a park and you got to get to the park. But once you're there, there are some pretty amazing things that happen. So I've listed a few things here. Of course, this is only, just an example of what we offer. But I wanted to make sure that what I'm listing is connected to what teachers are teaching. We define educational programs as, and of course, I spent time in early ed, so I have to use my little fingers for this. Educational programs they reinforce academic standards by answering an essential question about some phenomenon or Tennessee history, by using teamwork and exploration. So that is my goal, is to provide those type of experiences to students. So here's how they connect to standards. If we've got creek crawls or boat tours, we talk about ecosystem balance or a changing environment. They can see the real life evidence of these things. If hiking is more what you have the time for, or more what's in your standards for that year, we can do photosynthesis hikes, collect evidence that way. Or we can look for evidence of early settlers or the Civilian Conservation Corps. I love it when I'm at, there's a hiking loop at Frozen Head, north of Knoxville. And if you're observant, you'll be walking along and you stop and you're like, what is that? What is that? And it is evidence of a CCC camp there. Wildlife is, of course, what we're known for. We look at characteristics, whether that's characteristics of a pelt or a skull, characteristics of a live wildlife ambassador, and how do those characteristics promote survival? We look at food chains and food webs. But then we also have history, basically all of Tennessee history. Forts, house tours, museums. It isn't just history is more, and I'm sure everybody here on this call knows history is more than battlefields. And so we really want to focus on what are the stories of real Tennesseans and how can we connect those real stories, those real experience, how can we make them relevant for our students today? So we've got Native American archaeological sites down at Old Stone Fort, or out in Jackson at Penson Mounds. Can see how archaeologists have uncovered some of what we know today, and get to go out on hikes and look for evidence yourself. And then, of course, we do everything from, those people who just said, no, I will not follow the proclamation line request in, was it 1763? Yeah. And I'm going to go over those Appalachian Mountains, and I'm going into what is now Tennessee. Everything from that time period through Victory Gardens at York, up there north of Cookeville. So we really cover everything at a field trip, and you get to see the evidence yourself. I want to point out a couple of the pictures here. Rangers down, before we get on in the kayaks, we're going to talk about what you're going to see. I want you to be looking for these things. At the bottom, we have Noah Sins at Johnsonville, showing, of course, a map. Have to include a map. So students get an understanding of what they're going to see when they go out into the park. Let's get a sense of place and then go out into the park. So we love our field trips, but we know that that isn't always the best option for every teacher. So we've got a couple more options of ways to get connected. School visits by rangers. We have rangers love, they love to be in their park. but they love to go to schools. I probably shouldn't share this, especially on a recorded situation here, but I know rangers who love to work with students so much that they have gone to do educational experiences at schools on their days off, because it's just so it's the happy feeling of everything they do. It's so important. So a few examples of what our school visits look like. They range usually from 30 minutes to an hour. And we can talk about plants, whether that's photosynthesis or life cycles, or how plants were used by Native Americans or early settlers. Wildlife, talk about those life cycles, like I said, or characteristics. How do we classify animals, like second grade? How do we classify animals based on their characteristics? Well, let's bring some evidence of those characteristics and find out. Maybe bring a live animal and find out. And then I'm going to point out this echolocation program. Got a ranger in East Tennessee up there near Johnson City who does this echolocation program with a slinky to show like wavelengths and how they move. And it's just so fun. I like to go to their programs. And then, of course, history. And I talk about, we do almost all of Tennessee history. And I'm pretty sure there's like some 5th grade standards. They were like Bristol Motor Speedway, and talk about Dolly Parton and Elvis. And I don't know that we talk about all of those, maybe Dolly. But what we're really promoting in the last few years, and as part of our plan moving forward, is to really show evidence for students. Let's look at those primary sources and those secondary sources. So we're looking at history through the evidence that we have, because sometimes history is really inspiring and sometimes it makes you feel really good. But history is the history of people, and people are complicated, and our history is complicated, and our rangers have expertise in those primary and secondary sources. And so I like to say, let's just ask the expert. What do the sources say? So that I feel like our teachers are really enjoying having that expert on hand. And then finally, we want to be accessible through virtual chats with rangers. So as you imagine, this has been increasingly a way to connect with our schools and our parks, because this is where people are, and this is where we've been for the last couple of years. You can see here a ranger north of Chattanooga. She's at Hawassi-Ocoee State Park, and she's connecting with students in Polk County because she wasn't able to come to the school, but they're still able to connect and learn about the park, learn about what a ranger does. How do you get to be a ranger? How do you go from being the second grader in a picture to a ranger on the screen? It's also a great way to meet some of our animal ambassadors, our birds of prey, our amphibians, our reptiles. Sometimes it's a little much to bring them into a classroom. So if you feel more comfortable, have a presentation. I love this option, and I've been pushing this with parks to use virtual connections as an ask an expert experience. So I have the idea of, when I do a unit, when I'm teaching a unit, anytime there's a really good question, put that question in an old spaghetti jar. And then as it gets filled up, and as you get to the end of the unit or halfway through the unit, you have a ranger on the screen, and you open that spaghetti jar and you just start asking all the questions. Asking an expert is just a great way to really engage with students. And we love when that's an option for our rangers. Do want to make a note that our parks are in rural and rugged areas. And so not all of our parks are able to connect virtually. It's definitely worth asking. But it just like, Wi-Fi, out in some of our areas of Tennessee, it is a little hit and miss. But this is an area that we're going to be growing in the next several years. All right, so if we're thinking field trips and classroom visits and virtual connections, what does that look like in a specific park? What are some of the specific unique stories that we're sharing? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all 8 like core districts for education. And I'm going to start up in like the Johnson City area, and I'm going to move west and finish up in Memphis. So as we look at the First Tennessee and the East Tennessee areas, we see some of our earlier history for early settlers. Sycamore Shoals is in Elizabethton. There's a fort there. This is where they talk about, those people who just didn't want to follow that proclamation line request by the British, and they came over the mountains and they formed the Watauga settlement. This is where, we really talk about Dragging Canoe and Nancy Ward, John Sevier, and even the Over Mountain Men, and how the Watauga settlement is connected to the Revolutionary War. The living history here is amazing. The park manager at this park has literally written, books about the area. So always a joy when I get to go to Sycamore Shoals. Fort Loudon is in the park system kind of famous for their education and outreach. They probably have more field trips than any other park in East Tennessee, I want to say. It is a field trip destination. It's a large fort. It's the French and Indian War. They do, living history every day, all day. There's a ranger who just moved to this park, and I point him out because I think rangers do everything. And they often know, those history rangers, they know like everything. And if they don't know, they will not put down their phone until they find out. And there's a ranger who just moved into Fort Loudon, and it's his 3rd historic site. And each site has had a different era of Tennessee history. But I know that even though he's only been there a few months, that he can tell me anything about Fort Loudon, the time period, any of the details. Because I know at his other sites, he could tell me the importance of the metal that was in the nails in the boots of the soldiers in World War I. Like, it was that specific. So I just think that they're fantastic experts. And Fort Loudon is an excellent field trip experience. They also do a lot of virtual experiences too. I think Fort Loudon started our virtual connections. They were doing Skype in the classroom before anybody else. All right, we're going to move down into Chattanooga. So I hope you're ready. You're coming down I-75. We're just in the Knoxville area. We're down into Chattanooga, past Chattanooga, and we're going to stop at the Georgia border and visit Red Clay. Red Clay is one of our sacred and solemn sites. It is a site that is incredibly important to the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation. This park works directly with descendants and members of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Nation to make sure that this site is reflecting the stories that they want us to tell, and that their voices are heard, and that we're protecting this space in a way that is respectful to them. There are areas of Red Clay State Park that are not accessible to the general public because it is a sacred and solemn space. And this is a great place to learn about some of the beginning places of the Trail of Tears. You see there in the picture the eternal flame marking that Trail of Tears beginning. I just feel every time I go to Red Clay, I learn something, and I leave just with this sense of reverence and peace. They do exceptional educational programs. the Kentucky border and see the Alvin C. York and the Cordell Hull Birthplace State Park. So these parks are pretty close together. For a field trip, I would recommend going separately. But if it's you with your family, it's a good day. Do both. Start at Cordell Hall, go to Alvin C. York, have some breakfast, and do the York Park in the afternoon. I have to admit something. I grew up in Tennessee, went to Tennessee schools. I didn't know about Cordell Hull. And I thought I had heard about York, but only from a movie. These are both very immersive parks, especially Alvin C. York, talking about World War I, the work that Alvin York did to uplift the people in the valley and his community is significant. I mean, his devotion to his community, to education, those are aspects that I didn't know about him until you're there and he comes alive. He drove the school bus for the students he started a school and then he drove the school bus so the students in his community could go to school. We've had tours where there's a tour group going through a house tour or in the trench, as you see as these living history members are in the trench. They are literal World War I trench they built. And during the tour, a member of Alvin's, they call him Alvin, member of Alvin's family will just join the tour just to kind of hang out, talk to people. It's a fantastic park for learning. And as we move over to Cordell Hall, Cordell Hall has a little of everything. You see a replica cabin to experience what was life like when he was first growing up. And you look at this cabin and you walk through and can touch a couple things and be like, okay, I can get this. And then you go in the museum and you see he has letters and gifts from, the King of England. And to see that growth, that journey that he went on and think, wow, he was a Tennessean. I just love that about that park. There are definitely standards for both of these people. All right, we're going to get back on I-40 and we're going to head past Nashville. We're going to get on 24. We're pretending, so it's okay to be on 24. It's just not my favorite road. We're going to get on 24. We're going to head up to Clarksville. And in Clarksville, we see those little girls again. They're at Dunbar Cave, learning about the significance of Native Americans in the area. In the cave, you see artwork by Native Americans. They get to see that with their special flashlights and then talk about all the things of a cave. It's just such a cool experience there. And then next to that, I have to include Port Royal. It's one of our smaller parks. It is in a community that is descendant of, I believe, enslaved Africans who were there. It is a fantastic, it's a fantastic space. And what they're really growing the story and bringing it back to a place where people in the community are coming to tell the stories of people who lived there. And we're able to learn from them. And then the picture you see there is the Trail of Tears. And walking there on it in a program led by a ranger, that immersive experience cannot be replicated. And I always tell people, like, if you're going to go to a park and you want a really immersive experience, that's a fantastic example. All right. So we're going to move over to another Trail of Tears park, but we're going to go to David Crockett. So that's down past Nashville in the Lawrenceburg area. David Crockett State Park. We've got two David Crockett State Parks because, can't have enough David Crockett. But David Crockett birthplace is way over there. Is this east on your screen? Is in East Tennessee. And this is David Crockett, not Birthplace State Park, in Lawrenceburg. This is where people are really learning, children learn about how David Crockett moved across the state and eventually to the Alamo, what his life was and his impact was in the Lawrenceburg area and on Tennessee. And as a bonus to this park, they have an additional story, because as you leave the David Crockett story and you walk outside, you follow this trail, follow these three little girls holding hands, follow this trail out. When you get to the end of the trail, there's a sign that says, "You are now on the Trail of Tears." Really showing that it wasn't one trail. There were multiple avenues, but it's a way in that area of the state to really talk about that important story. All right, I hope you guys are ready. You got your snacks. So we only have one more area of the state to go. We're trying to get to Memphis. So we're back on I-40. We're halfway between Nashville and Jackson. And we're going to get off and head to Waverly, Tennessee, to Johnsonville State Park. Now, for field trips, this is a favorite. You can see there on the left, park manager Bob Holliday. He's dressed as a Union soldier, and these students are practicing all of the different roles of an artillery team. This is not a real cannon. This is a PVC pipe with a slingshot type mechanism. But this idea that everybody in the military has a specific role, and you take it seriously, and you communicate, and you are safe, and you work together as a team. They get to practice this right there by that railroad track that was part of the Union depot during the Civil War. There was a battle of Johnsonville that they talk about on a different side of the park. This park does a lot of really hands-on experiences. So students can get to know what life was like, what the battle was about, and what life has been since then in this site. All right, back on I-40, all the way into Memphis, almost all the way to the border. We're going to find T.O. Fuller State Park. T.O. Fuller State Park is a smaller park, and but it's got a lot going on. T.O. Fuller State Park was first built in part by the CCC, and it was the very first park for African Americans on this side of the Mississippi River. That's a lot of land. And Tennessee has the very first park for African Americans. This was a segregated park for a very long time. We're currently working to get this park as part of the National Historic Registry, as I believe it so deserves. And we want to share Dr. Fuller's story of education, his aspirations for his community in that area of Memphis, and talk about his work in civil rights and activism. It's a fantastic park with a new fantastic park manager. He's a friend of mine. Always love to advertise that for her. So this is just a few. These are just a few of our parks. Remember, we have 57 and 4 more coming. So we hope you'll think of us for that. So how do teachers know, and how do teachers connect? And where is that free stuff, that free funding? How do I get a free field trip? So we want to talk about a few things. You do get a copy of this presentation on Padlet in case, you can't access the QR code. Something's not working. But you can connect with us virtually in a couple of ways. The first way is our YouTube channel. Now, this YouTube channel is for our entire state park system. So if you're interested in the new lodge or the new restaurant at one of our parks, you can find that information here. But you can also find some really great education on historic cultural education, natural environmental education. This is a great way to go ahead and just throw these programs into your mix. It gives you a little bit of a taste of what we do. So I invite you to check out our YouTube page. And then this is my biggest thing for the last year, how to get connected. We want to make it easier for a teacher to book an educational experience with Tennessee State Parks. Coming from a family of teachers, I feel like a big part of my job is translating teacher talk and ranger talk, and then like sharing to each other what that means. And when I would tell rangers, teachers can't reach you because they go home and they put their own kids to bed, and many pull out a laptop and start planning a field trip at 9 o'clock at night. And they're like, you could tell they were like shaking their head and like they really didn't believe me. I now have proof from this online form that teachers are using. A lot of our offices close at 4:30. So if you call the park, it's hard to get in touch with us. But now on our website, TennesseeStateParks.com, you can use the QR code there. If you come to us at TennesseeStateParks.com, we're under that activities circle at the top. But if you're on our For Educators page, you just click Submit a Request. You give us a couple of dates, select a park, tell us, did you want a field trip, a classroom visit, or to connect virtually? And then tell us about a description you're thinking of. What do you think? Do you want to talk about food chains and food webs, or do you want to come and tour the fort? Is there a specific standard you want us to reinforce? It's a great way to just say, hey, I'd like to connect. That form goes directly to the ranger at the park you selected. That way, that ranger can get that in their email any time of day, and they can contact you in a couple of days to see how they can get you on their schedule. So I encourage you, if you're interested, check out what our parks are offering on the website and submit a request. As part of that request, we do have a funding option. So like I said, the two little girls here, their park experience was free and paid for by our Tennessee State Parks Conservancy. The Conservancy funding question is part of that request form. So if you, so at the bottom of the form, it'll say, would you like for this experience, would you like funding for your field trip experience? And you click yes. And then it'll ask you, how much are you budgeting for transportation? Just so our Conservancy knows, can they cover it or not? The funding covers transportation and if there are any park fees. Tennessee State Parks is one of only 7 in the country that does not charge an admission fee. So I tell people, you can come to our park, you can observe the tree and make sure it's safe, hug the tree, and leave. And nobody's going to charge you any money for that. That's unique. But we believe these are your Tennessee State Parks, and we want to make them as accessible as possible. And that includes funding those field trips. So we want to make sure that if our Conservancy has the funds, that your transportation and your program fees are covered. Typically, our program fees for education are $0 anyway, but we want to make sure that's covered just in case. So I invite you to go back to our website, see if I can go back, and request a program with us today. I hope that you now feel, a little bit about what we offer, how to connect with us. And so I invite you to, like I said, check out our website. Feel free to email me if you think of any questions after this presentation. I know we're a little early. I tried to save some time for questions at the end. So I'd like to stop sharing my screen. What I'm going to do is open it up to, if anybody has any questions, you want to come off mute, or Kira, if you have any questions from the comment section, just let me know. Also, if you have a favorite park and you just want to give them a shout out, say, yeah, I was there last weekend and it was amazing. Feel free to do that as well. I'm always happy to pass that along to rangers.
I know the York Park. I've been up there several times. That is a great park. They have several really cool buildings and sites that you can see. The house is very, so it's a great tour.
Yeah, it's a favorite of mine for sure. Walking through that trench, it's you just can really imagine what it was like in that area. Love the interpretation going on at Dunbar and Port Royal. Yay! Yep, I absolutely agree. I actually, like I said, crashed a ranger training yesterday in the evening and got to see the park manager and the ranger from Dunbar and Port Royal. And there, it was great to see them. I was like, hey, I need to come to your park, not for work, just for fun. Yep. Oh, I think I saw something in the chat there. Let me check that out. York is a fun park. Oh, the grist mill is good. Yes, thank you. I forgot to give a shout out to the grist mill at York. We had several mills at a lot of our parks to really talk about the economic impact on the area and just kind of how life was. Love Paris Landing, but haven't been since it was remodeled. Oh my goodness, I just went to Paris Landing, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before, and they have a part-time employee who is a retired teacher. So I see some really amazing things coming for their educational programming, and the remodeling is gorgeous. After today, I want to visit Port Royal. Yes. So shout out to Port Royal. If you've never been there before, they have one employee. It's just Mr. Bobby Cooley. He gives them exceptional programs. He makes the signage so to tell the story of the area, and he's doing the refurbishments on the general store himself. Fort Loudon is a great park. It was my second grade field trip, my second field trip in kindergarten. That's fantastic. I grew up in the area and they do a fantastic job. Oh, thanks, Connor. Or thanks, Josh Connor. That's great. So Fort Loudon is on my list. I think I'm just going to be that annoying coworker who just emails some rangers and say, hey, can I just come and visit for a field trip? I want to go on some field trips. Can I just audit your field trip? And Loudon is on the list. Anyone have questions about how to connect with us for funding for parks, or anyone have suggestions on what they would like to see from a park experience, or some resources that we can offer you?
This is unrelated. The Tennessee State Library and Archives. I am Lindsay. We are partnering with the state parks to do some videos for our DocsBox program. So we just spent a couple weeks ago the whole day in York and doing a lot of filming there, so we can bring our primary sources into the park for kids to see in our program.
Oh, that's so exciting to hear. Oh, Lindsay, that we want to make more virtual content, and that is on our list. But I am a team of one. It's just me. And so I imagine you're a team of just a few.
Yeah, there's two or three full-time, three part-time. So we have a few, but we're working on it. Like, we're going to send some video footage to Nate out there. And so in our next plant park we're going to do is Fort Loudon. So hopefully in the spring. So Fantastic. We're excited about this partnership.
Yes, partnerships are the way to go. For sure. Yes. I just had a meeting just this afternoon with the Department for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, so we can make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students, providing virtual content, and even, I think I can officially say this, augmented and virtual reality experiences. So look for that in the fall. If you're familiar with my goodness, just thought the name of the app just ran out of Time Looper. If you're familiar with the Time Looper app, it's so cool, where we are hoping to get to a moment where we are going to get to this moment, because we've already filmed it and it's in development, where as a teacher, you can pull up the app on your computer. You can click Tennessee State Parks, CCC, and an entire experience will pop up from the CCC. And it can be a firsthand, using primary sources, firsthand account of the park story, the CCC experience from multiple perspectives. We're really, really excited about using technology and our Telling Full Stories project as well for that. So lots of good things coming down the pipe.
That's a great project. Yes.
Yeah. I'm glad to be a part of that project, but not be in charge of that project because my technical skills, not so great.
Mine neither.
Well, if anyone has any thoughts or questions, if they want to hang on until as we conclude, you can feel free to do that and stick around. So as we kind of get ready to wrap up, Sarah, unless you have anything else you want to add in?
That's all I have.
All right, so just a quick reminder again, the Padlet page is there, and as Sarah mentioned, there's a PDF version of today's PowerPoint. So if you want access to those QR codes or any of the great information that she shared with us, you can find that on that page. Next month, we will return for our final session in this year's series, and that will be with our Teaching with Primary Sources program. And we're going to be talking about using primary sources to explore the richness of Tennessee history. So looking at several different topics in Tennessee history and some ideas about how you can bring primary sources into kind of layer and explore that with your kids. If you've not already registered for that, go to this link and you'll be able to find the registration page for that session. And again, that'll be on the second Tuesday of March at 4 p.m. We are also really excited to launch with our Discover Tennessee History group a new survey. We have all been looking at ways to better engage with and serve you, our favorite Tennessee teachers. And to do that, we have created an educator survey. We're looking to kind of again find out what you all are looking for in the ways of PD. When do you want it? What are you looking for as far as the session types, experiences with that? And then what kind of educational resources are you looking for? So if you would take a few minutes to fill this out, it really would be very helpful to us, again, as we figure out better ways to serve you both as a collaborative group here, as well as within our individual programs. And we would really appreciate your feedback. And then finally, if you're interested in receiving PD credit for today's session or for viewing this recording, you can do so by completing the short survey at this link. And I'm going to show you a QR code to access that on the next slide. We check these surveys about once a week, and we'll send out your certificate once we get those completed, again, about once every week. So again, take a moment to fill that out. That is how you will receive your PD credit for viewing today's session. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for your time and attention. We were really happy to have you join us today as we learned about state parks and all the really awesome things that state parks has to offer to our students. So thank you guys, and we hope to see you next month.